I'm interested as to what your read is on this situation. How fierce is the threat coming from state-related activists and hackers?
It's actually incredibly fierce, and it's because there's a very strong motivation to do these kinds of attacks. And what you'll see is that this particular group, who is, part of, we think, Silk Typhoon, or maybe a separate group, we've been seeing this type of activity classified under something called Brick Storm. And it sounds terrifying because it is terrifying, and that's why the Cybersecurity Agency in the United States put out an emergency directive just this Wednesday, because 48 out of the Fortune 50 are using F5. A vast number of the federal government are using F5. We suspect that there's thousands of devices being deployed. And really, because the source code is now out there and in the hands of the Chinese, that means that a nation-state attacker is now looking for vulnerabilities in this source code and has information they never should have had about undisclosed vulnerabilities that F5 was already investigating. And because the attacker was there for more than a year studying F5, it's actually quite terrifying, all the capability they could have.
How have they gone unnoticed for so long?
Well, one of the biggest reasons is because if the attacker comes in over remote management devices and protocols using 0 days, it's very hard to find the initial vector of how they originally got into that network. And, simply, if they got in more than a year ago, the chances are high that there's not even logs that hold that type of log retention for over a year. Let's start there. That's how we don't know when they actually got in the first place. The second part of that problem is most of these network devices don't have like a sort of, detection and response that we can actually see. There's no EDR in these network devices, so we can't actually see this malicious activity. We don't necessarily see this telemetry as they're conducting this lateral movement. I mean, theoretically, we should, and at some point F5 did, but that was as late as August of this year. And they were directed for national security concerns to keep it quiet until they could release this information in their SEC filing.
Jaya, you are making it clear to our audience how critical this is. But when we all go home and sit around our dinner tables, I don't feel like this is becoming the topic of conversation that perhaps it should be, given the strength of the concerns and anxieties you make clear. What is it that ends up affecting the consumer or more writ large in this circumstance?
The fact of the matter is, especially from a consumer perspective, we don't always feel like paying for cybersecurity. We think it should be built in rather than bolted on from a consumer perspective. Enterprises are more used to this notion that, it's like a never done thing that we continuously need to improve, that it's a rinse and repeat like action, but we still expect more and better from cybersecurity vendors, from people who are comfortable in this space. But frankly, if you are really successful with your software and hardware, you should expect that nation states will target you for some type of supply chain compromise. It's almost inevitable. It's because of that very success that your reputation and your network and information systems are critically at risk.
And particularly in the world of AI, where the ever more sophisticated attacks are happening and writ large at such pace. Jaya, this is where your company comes in. And I'm so interested in Isle and what you're currently building, because you're saying it's the first AI native cyber reasoning system. Can you talk us through exactly how it works differently from others?
Yes. So we are AI-native, which means that everything we do starts from an AI-first principle. And one of the most tenacious problems we have in cybersecurity is this ability to both find the right set of vulnerabilities and then remediate them quickly. So what we do at Isle is exactly that. We have an analyzer that actually looks to find those vulnerabilities that truly matter, not just small, low-level bugs. And we've proven that with, several very famous programs that you have online, open source programs. We found incredibly critical 0 days. We've reported them responsibly to the maintainers of these open source projects, and they have fixed them. And what we've really been trying to do is make sure that we are not just showing, hey, this stuff is broken, but allowing customers to actually be able to remediate those incredibly quickly at superhuman speed. And that has to be how we work, because you can bet your bottom dollar that the attackers are using AI. Now we need to make sure that the defenders are too. And this is something that really we haven't been doing in this way for so long. And this kind of static basis that we've had is no longer suitable for the types of threats that we face.
Just going to Isle and who its core customer is, it feels that it's everyone, but all these cyber companies are becoming ever more platforms and want to own your entire ecosystem of cyber. So where do you fit in, Jaya?
Well, we start where everything is being built. So if you're right now, I feel like every customer that we look at is really, I mean, it's remarkable, but we have changed into a planet that operates on software. So everything that we actually look at is a company that's using software. So if they build software, if they're having someone else build software for them, for their manufacturing process, for their supply chain, you know, for those kinds of potential customers and design partners, that's where we come in and we try to make sure that those supply chain vulnerabilities that could impact others downstream, as well as their own vulnerabilities, that we give them critical knowledge to know what is it that's really broken that you need to focus on, and how can we get you to a place where you have zero vulnerabilities coming in. Most of these companies also have rather terrifying backlogs of vulnerabilities that they have not fixed, millions in the backlog. And I'm telling you, as a CISO of 3 different publicly listed companies, I've had these experiences myself of these tenacious, hard to fix vulnerabilities, and I wished for this solution, which is why we now built it.